You're listening to We Are STS, a podcast from the Department of Science and Technology Studies at University College London. Hi, everybody, and welcome to We Are STS. I'm your host, Professor Joe Kane. This is episode 27. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to We Are STS. You know, the assignments students do in our classes today seem nothing like what they used to be. These days, the goal is to build portfolios with all sorts of things: short writing, long writing, posters, campaigns, presentations. Add to these projects like podcasts, films, strategy papers, SWOT analyses, debates, and big project proposals. It's hard work of quite different kinds. By the time they finish with us, we want our students skilled up, practiced, and ready to go. Today's episode samples from this year's student-made news stories, which were created for our undergraduate class in science journalism. That's run by Dr. Jean-Baptiste Gouyon. The assignment is straightforward. Create a 3-minute news feature for radio about a recent piece of research at UCL. Students start with a press release, and they have to figure out where to go from there. Their piece must include a short interview with the researcher. The maximum time is 3 minutes. Students work to a tight deadline, and they use just a laptop and their phone. The idea is to create the real-world setting and pace of a freelance journalist. For you, I've selected 8 projects that I like a lot. We'll take a quick break in the middle, but I want to leave the students to deliver their work as they presented it. So let's just get started with the first project.
Dreading the sound of the alarm? Good news. The largest ever collaborative sleep study finds improved sleep after the age of 53. UCL, UEA, and the University of Lyon have carried out a study of over 700,000 participants and revealed over 60s report getting the most sleep each night, whilst middle-aged adults were found to be the most sleep-deprived age group. These results have surprised many scientists, as previous studies have shown sleep to decline with age.
I have to say I am a little surprised by this, but on reflection, maybe not as surprised as I was initially, because we know that external environmental factors have huge impacts on our sleep already, and one of the major factors is working. When people have jobs and careers and children, these have huge impacts on how much sleep we get.
That was sleep expert Jason Reihel from UCL. He identifies high levels of stress throughout adult life perhaps being the cause for reports of less sleep. So we ask Oliver Wheatley, a 21-year-old young professional, about how his busy work life impacts his sleep.
These shorter hours of sleep have definitely developed since starting work. I quite often have to go to London from where I live in Worthing, which is a 3-hour door-to-door commute. This requires me leaving much earlier, usually leaving at about 6 a.m, but I'll usually still go to bed around 2:30 a.m, so sleep that night is usually closer to 3 hours instead of 5.
Whilst the findings that sleep is low in mid-adults in this study is not disputed, claims that sleep is improved in later life has attracted many sceptics. 57-year-old Fiona Lang, a full-time accountant with 2 children, insists she has not perceived an increase in her sleep over the past 4 years.
I think my sleep has definitely changed over the last 10 years. I'm now 57 and I've been going through the menopause since I was 53. This has definitely affected my sleep pattern for the worse. At night you feel extremes of temperature, hot or cold. My body just doesn't really regulate temperature very well anymore, and I think that wakes me up.
Sleep is evidently a big problem for many individuals like Fiona and Ollie. So let's ask, does getting the NHS recommended 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night benefit us in the long term? Jason Reihel reports that losing sleep may be a bigger problem than we realise.
There's beginning to be evidence that people who chronically sleep less over long periods of time, say decades, are at higher risk for obesity, adverse cardiovascular health, but also the possibility that these can lead to dementias and problems later in life.
Between stressful jobs, the cost of living crisis, and a national health service on its knees, it is no wonder that people are struggling to sleep through the night. The latest study promises hope for improved sleep in the future, but this may be too late to avert serious health risks from lack of sleep throughout life. More research is needed urgently.
Speaking and writing, they're integral to everyday life. But what if we could take a language and print it in 3D? This is the question being asked by two UCL researchers in a project combining the disciplines of anthropology and architecture.
I'm Alex Pillen. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Anthropology, and I work on the anthropology of language.
A couple of years ago, while writing a book on the Kurdish language, Dr. Pillen began looking for an abstract front cover design to represent the architecture of the language.
First, it was an illustration of existing ideas, and then when we started talking, this evolved, and I started seeing them as objects themselves that could teach us about language, about its history. So we took a sample from 4 very different languages.
These 4 languages were Kurdish, the extinct ancient language of Akkadian, the Amazonian language Tariana, and English. The language samples were analysed line by line and turned into a digital 3D form. The resulting structure can be viewed through the metaphor of language as a textile.
We use contemporary software to weave syllables onto a timeline. And what we do is creating, if you wish, a digital fabric to represent language.
This digital fabric is formed using a Cartesian system of X, Y, and Z axes. We can hear more about this from Emma Kate Matthews, Dr. Pillen's collaborator from the Bartlett School of Architecture.
The number of lines define the x-axis as a representation of time, and the number of syllables in each line determines the length of the y-axis. So if we continue this kind of metaphor as language being like a textile, these 2 axes form the warp and the weft of that fabric. The evidential weights then determine a distance along the z-axis from 0, which is what gives the textile its sort of undulating appearance.
Time and syllable length seem fairly straightforward, but what about the z-axis variable, evidentiality?
Evidentiality in language refers to the fact that when we speak, we reveal the sources of our information, whether the information you convey has been seen by yourself or heard or conveyed by somebody else. In different cultures and in different languages, this kind of aspect of language is accentuated in a different way, has a different value.
Having made the digital weave, the models were then 3D printed.
We tried a few different materials, from various plastics to a rubber-like material, which was really interesting and because it sort of behaved a bit like a textile.
So to conclude, I asked the question, what does holding a language in 3D form convey which the written word can't?
Natural language has been evolved over millennia, is a cultural product in its own right. And by holding it and kind of becoming aware of that complexity, and also the complexity that might be disappearing when these endangered languages indeed becoming extinct, I think that's why it's so important to also have it as a 3D object that can be appraised not only intellectually but also effectively.
Thank you to Dr. Alex Pillen and Emma Kate Matthews, and thank you for listening.
New research from UCL's Institute of Sport, Exercise and Health scholars shows that if middle-aged individuals take part in more moderate to vigorous physical activity, their cognitive processes of memorizing, planning and organization increase as a result. This could be very good news for the British population, as it is reported to face growing rates of dementia, which symptoms are deteriorated abilities to think, remember or make decisions in the later life. To better understand how healthy movement in the middle life strengthens our brain power, as well as what needs to be done to make our society more active, I spoke with John Mitchell, a lead author of the aforementioned study. Mr. Mitchell and his colleagues examined 4,481 English, Welsh, and Scottish participants between the ages of 46 and 47. Scholars found that an increase in cognition scores was mostly influenced by moderate to vigorous physical activity, or MVPA.
We found that even 9 minutes or so was the minimum change you could make from the average day, and put some time from sleep or sedentary time into moderate to vigorous physical activity, and you would see you had a higher cognition score.
To better understand what exact activity should be done to boost one's daily MVPA, Mr. Mitchell pointed to an array of different intensity activities.
Moderate tends to be the kind of activity you're doing during doubles tennis, where you have prolonged periods of standing and not doing too much, but then there's also times when you're moving quite vigorously. And then there's vigorous physical activity, which is more like singles tennis when you're absolutely sweating.
Both less and more active movement means that it doesn't take to do traditional exercises to take care of one's cognition.
It doesn't necessarily mean to say that individuals should go out and get 9 minutes of dedicated exercise or aerobic activity. So go out there and get your MVPA from you climbing stairs, from jogging from the bus. It really doesn't matter how you get it, but it really is critical to bolster it and keep it.
However, while MVPA seems as an easy fix to growing cognition problems, current situation does not seem too positive. According to UK government data, around 1 in 3 of British men and 1 in 2 of British women of all ages are not active enough for good health. Mr. Mitchell claims that societal problems need societal level changes. A good place to start is transforming our workplaces.
This is something which the team at the Institute of Sport, Exercise and Health have been talking about for a long time, and that's something called active workplaces. At the moment, there's absolutely very little provision for individuals in the UK, especially working professionals, to go out and engage in moderate to vigorous physical activity within their day. And there's very little interest in and uptake in standing desks and walking meetings, things like this.
Facing a future of growing dementia cases, Mr. Mitchell and his colleagues' research sparks hope that a way to fight this is increasing MVPA in the middle life. Climbing stairs can easily be introduced into daily routines of many of us. However, in order to minimize the numbers of cognition problems, it is important that responsible organizations do their part in providing more opportunities for movement in our daily lives.
Almost everyone I know has had COVID-19. Indeed, the most up-to-date data shows that the majority of people in many countries have had COVID-19. Despite affecting so many people, how the coronavirus disease works is not understood very well, especially in its long-term health effects, also known as long COVID. What we are certain of is its complexity. A recent study was published in mid-February 2023 in the Journal of the Royal Society of Medicine that provides us another piece of the puzzle that is COVID-19 and long COVID. The study found that 3 in 5 people who were caught by the first wave of COVID in 2020, before there were any vaccines available, had damage in at least one organ after 1 year. And the surprising thing is, most of the people in this study were not seriously ill by their initial COVID-19 infection.
Even if the effect, because of vaccination, because of different variants, is less than what we've shown, I still think this tempers the message that we should almost be encouraging people to get infected. And you see on both sides of the Atlantic people using phrases like "let it rip" in the population, but actually that has consequences which are beyond just people who are vulnerable going to intensive care and dying, that there may be a chronic disease burden associated with it.
That's a warning from a researcher who co-led the study.
I'm Professor Amitabh Banerjee, Professor of Clinical Data Science at the Institute of Health Informatics at University College London. My research training originally was in epidemiology, which is large-scale study of diseases, trying to describe patterns of disease using the best data possible. It's a big piece of my raison d'etre is that it doesn't matter what my opinion or your opinion is. Like we should be searching for data and evidence to back it up.
While data might be crucial in finding effective treatments for COVID-19, Dr. Banerjee also acknowledges the limits of data.
And that's not something you hear often enough, but that's the case. There's no data that's perfect.
Long COVID may also be a contributing factor to this time of unrest, with strikes across many sectors.
I think long COVID is part of that issue where you've got people who've got huge uncertainty and insecurity because of not being able to get paid, not having their full health.
So what can you do? Anyone can get long COVID, and because of its potential to do long-term harm, it's crucial to avoid being infected or reinfected by COVID. Dr. Banerjee suggests, if you can, to stay up to date on your COVID and flu shots. Thank you for listening and stay safe.
Okay, that's 4 projects. Let's take a short break.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and I'm a student studying the history and philosophy of science and medicine at STS this year. What I love about STS is the range of modules. You can study anything from magic in the ancient world to science journalism with like-minded individuals.
Hey everyone, my name is Charlie Beeston, and I'm a first-year natural sciences student. I take modules in STS. What I love about STS, it's interdisciplinarity. You can study history, philosophy, sociology, and politics of science from world-leading academics.
Let's get back to the projects. 4 down and 4 to go. Remember, details for each are in the show notes and on the episode page via our website. Let's hear the rest of the projects from my selection.
Welcome to UCL Science Daily, your daily report on burning topics in science research at UCL. Today, we're talking about breast milk. Trends show chronic diseases are increasing. Today, we hear from Dr. Lydia Mapstone at Booby Biome, an interesting research initiative based at UCL's Institute of Children's Health. Booby Biome's research shows that the bacteria in breast milk is in fact essential for setting up an infant's immunity to protect them in the future from these diseases. So does that mean the solution is just more breastfeeding? Booby Biome says it's not that simple. But you might be wondering, who is Dr. Lydia Mapstone and what is Booby Biome?
So I'm a microbiologist and I completed my PhD here at UCL. And I thought it was really interesting that 40% of the first bacteria that we're exposed to come from breast milk. So I launched Booby Biome, where we are developing a supplement from breast milk that can ensure that all infants get these right useful bacteria they need for a healthy gut.
The majority of us probably haven't heard of a concept like this before. So how does this research even work?
We conduct DNA sequencing on breast milk and infant stool samples. We then work out which bacteria from the milk can help set up the immune system and aid digestion later on, then develop them into an infant bacterial supplement.
So, what are some of the health benefits of this, you ask?
There are several studies showing that being exposed to the relevant good bacteria in the first month of life is critical to having a healthy gut microbiome, and therefore important for safeguarding against future diseases. So, for example, formula-fed infants are more likely to develop asthma, eczema, allergies, and diabetes. These are all linked to missing out on exposure to beneficial microbes.
Now, you might be wondering, why is this initiative so important?
Some of us can't breastfeed, or can also lack these good bacteria in our milk, or shouldn't breastfeed at all due to medication or a condition. So this allows mothers and parents facing these to be more secure, knowing that they have access to a substitute for promoting their infant's gut health. At Booby Biome, we really feel that we can reduce the incidence of chronic diseases by providing the right bacteria infants need to establish a strong, healthy microbiome.
Now, I'm sure you're all wondering, if we do see a release of Booby Biome supplement, what future positive impacts can we expect to see on health and society?
Our ultimate mission is seeing if we can reverse the current trends in healthcare data and show a reversal of autoimmune diseases in infants taking our product. My overall vision is to see that when these children become adults, that they are far less likely to develop chronic conditions that you tend to develop in young adulthood, such as IBS, Parkinson's, and MS. So I'm really hopeful that by tackling this area, we can massively improve global health of the next generation.
We'd like to thank Dr. Lydia for joining us today, and we wish Booby Biome all the best.
Thank you for having me.
That's it for today from UCL Science Daily. And remember, by ensuring all infants have access to breast milk bacteria, we are promising better health for the future generation. Don't forget to tune in again tomorrow, and goodbye for now.
Nature of prescription. Could this be the next big healthcare trend? A recent review has highlighted the growing body of research that illustrates how exposure to green spaces can benefit our health. One study found that just 2 hours a week in nature is enough to improve mental and physical well-being, while another showed that exposure to green spaces can reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes and obesity. This review is an important piece of evidence that can be used to support the practice of green social prescribing. This is where patients are directed to activities that involve spending time in nature by their healthcare providers, with previously funded activities ranging from outdoor swimming to therapeutic horticulture. To find out more, I spoke to Dr. Rebecca Lovell, Senior Lecturer at the University of Exeter and green social prescribing expert, who began by explaining how nature-based activities can lead to positive health outcomes.
We think there are a huge number of different active mechanisms. Being with other people, doing something for your community, look after the environment, connecting with nature, being active, all sorts of different ways in which we think these activities are contributing to people's health and well-being.
Green social prescribing has also been praised for its unique ability to involve groups who may otherwise be put off by institutional healthcare settings. One novel initiative is Men's Sheds, where participants can pursue practical interests, as well as working on community projects, such as maintaining parks and other green spaces.
It can start to provide offer to a set of people who find it very difficult to go and talk about their feelings. The focus isn't on healthcare or mental health support. It's about being together with other people that you share something common with. And then it's, alongside that, there can be support for mental health needs and so on.
Many nature-based activities that may be offered as part of green social prescribing will have a direct positive impact on the local environment. While all activities in green spaces can foster a greater sense of connection between communities and nature.
It's part of a system of us thinking about ourselves and our communities and our environments, and it being a two-way thing that we can help the environment while it helps us.
But is green social prescribing too good to be true? The UK is already a place of huge healthcare inequalities, where certain population groups face avoidable and unjust differences in health outcomes. Could green social prescribing make this worse?
We fear that there may be a social patterning to who takes part in some types of green social prescribing. The people who hear and take up the messaging are the people with greater resources.
For many, there are simply too many barriers to get involved in nature-based activities, with time and finances preventing people from taking part. So while green social prescribing may have huge potential, we must move forward with care, ensuring that these initiatives are accessible to the people who need them the most.
For the last decades, invasive species have represented a crucial threat. The establishment of these organisms in non-native areas poses huge pressures on local wildlife, and despite the various tentatives to fight them, evidence suggests that stopping them could be even harder than previously thought. A recent study from University College London revealed that invasive species with fast lives are more likely to settle in new environments. Their short lifespans and fast reproduction mechanisms allow them to use energy faster and more efficiently, and to respond to climate and land use changes more effectively. The researchers also underlined that the majority of invasive species are fast-lived, which highlights the important threat they constitute.
There is a lot of factors that kind of facilitate invasive species to colonize an area and spread. And one of these factors is that most of these species behave like fast-living species.
That was lead researcher Dr. Gonzalo Albaladejo Robles from UCL. Dr. Robles also explained that losing slow-lived species for fast-lived invasors damages the ecosystem, because it replaces the normal diversity of life history strategies employed by animals in favor of the establishment of fast-lived organisms only. However, slow-lived species are crucial components of ecological populations as well.
Slow species, that ones that live longer and has very low offspring, are usually also key species on the environment. There are very specialized species, they have a very specialized diet or specialized interactions with other species. And what happens when we lose these species in favor of fast species is that we are just losing these key mechanisms in the environment to regulate itself.
According to Dr. Robles, moreover, the impacts of invasive species are not only environmental.
The impacts are always complex in the case of invasive species. In some cases, they have really, really high impacts on economics also and the ecological side.
The socio-economic impacts that invasive species can have include the further design of enhanced forestry and species conservation effort. Accordingly, controlling the spread of invasive species is extremely important.
The first thing that you need to account is trying to avoid invasive species to reach your area.
Where this has already occurred, quick responses and control actions are needed, because the impacts of invasive species are often unpredictable.
Biological systems are quite complex, so when you add a new piece into an engine that is already working, you don't know which are going to be the consequences.
And although the current debate on climate change mainly focuses on the rising temperatures, scientists propose it is the synergy between climate and land use change that is really problematic. The fact that most invasive species are very resilient to these changes is alarming.
Our world is highly interconnected. Just like in the human body, where the heart is connected to the rest of the organs by a complex network of blood vessels, studies have shown that the planet Earth shares a similar system. This can be explained through the microcosm-macrocosm analogy, which implies that the patterns and structures found at an individual scale can also exist at the universal one. Showcasing this and gaining a deeper understanding of how phenomena such as islands and volcanoes occur and their correlation to one another is one of the main goals of the recent project Upflow, led by Dr. Ana Ferreira.
The goal of the project is to really try to understand how mantle upwelling occurs in our planet.
Mantle upwelling is a process in which hot material from the Earth's mantle rises up towards the surface, and it is important because the formation of geological features is believed to depend on this process. Moreover, it also permits scientists to learn more about the structure and dynamics of the Earth's interior, as well as the processes that drive plate tectonics and volcanism.
In the past, in particular, we know that some of these massive events actually correlated with changes in the climate of our planet. It's correlated with extinctions as well, and even changes in the magnetic field of our planet.
The project took place at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, where seismometers were placed and recovered after a year, and the data will be used to build images of the Earth's interior down to 2,800 kilometers depth.
Currently, we don't understand, in particular, how upwellings in different regions connect or do not connect with each other. So hopefully, yes, we will get a breakthrough, in particular the connections at depth between all of these different upwellings, and also even maybe connections to the Earth's core, for example.
A way to understand what is being done is to think of it as a recording of the Earth's pulse. Something fascinating about this technique is its similarity to the ones employed by medical doctors to build CT scans of the human body. It truly highlights the cosmic significance and the many similarities that can be found between the astronomical, the geological, and the anatomical fields.
We sometimes joke a little bit that we are a little bit like doctors of the Earth, like medical doctors of the Earth, in the sense that we try to build as detailed as possible images of the Earth's interior, and then hopefully really try to understand how the system works as a whole. Yeah.
In light of recent events, it is natural to wonder if this project or similar ones could potentially lead to effective earthquake prediction systems.
I do not think even at the time scale of my life, but I would say in the very long term, of course, if we want to be able to predict earthquakes, we need really to understand deeply the fundamental physics of how our planet works. Downward motions that we kind of understand well now, but importantly also upward motions.
So now it's your turn to be curious. Look within yourself and around you and try to spot any connections you might find on the way, whether they are on an individual or universal scale. Thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.
I just love these stories. You've got to admire the finished projects given the task. Work fast, work in a topic you don't know much about, make it interesting, and make sure it's a finished project. Thanks to the students for their work, and a special thanks for those agreeing to interviews. It's really easy to say no when someone you don't know comes knocking on your door. But far more often, researchers at UCL, they welcome our students in and they give up a bit of their time. We just couldn't do projects like these without their help. If you know someone interested in science journalism or science communication, just ask them to get in touch. Maybe it's to do podcasts and freelance projects like these today. These all fit under the umbrella of Science and Technology Studies, or STS. We're a thriving community here at UCL, and there's always room for more. Music today included 2 pieces, Rollin' at 5 by Kevin MacLeod and Silly Intro by Alexander Nakarada. Both are available online at the website filmmusic.io. And during the break, you also heard Charlie and Sarah, former STS students, talking about their experiences in the department. WeAreSTS is a production of the Department of Science and Technology Studies at University College London. If you want to find out more about the show, listen to past episodes, or give us some feedback, just visit us online. Here's the address. It's ucl.ac.uk/STS/podcast. That's it for today. We'll have another episode ready soon. So until next time, everybody, don't forget that there's knowledge to be found just about everywhere, and that together, we are STS. Bye now. You've been listening to We Are STS, a podcast from the Department of Science and Technology Studies at University College London. Subscribe to the show and join us online. The address: ucl.ac.uk/STS/podcast.